Welcome back and thank you for staying with Morning Express. In case you're just joining us, my name is Jesse Rogers. It's about time we take a look at the way it is. This particular segment highlights major developments that have happened throughout the week, either politically or policy-wise, and we'll get to discuss them. So there has been rather a flurry of political activity over the weekend. A movement in the coastal region, movement in Turkana County as well. A lot of statements have been said, and we'll definitely build up on that even as we anticipate Parliament to resume its sitting after a 2-month-long recess on Tuesday. What's on the agenda? We delve deeper to find all this out. Joining me in studio, Arthur Odera, who's a former Teso North Member of Parliament, and we still have Stephen Mwakesi, who's joining us via way of Zoom. He's a public policy analyst. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time. I'd like to begin with what has happened over the weekend before we look forward. It has been quite interesting taking a look at the political tones or the political mentions that have come up over this weekend. Let's start in Turkana County, where the Governor Nanok actually took his war against Raila Odinga a notch higher. And just to quote a couple of words that were mentioned, he mentioned this: "I'm not going to sugarcoat things. BBI is very unpopular among Kenyans. It is discriminatory. It lacks participation and consensus. I will oppose its recommendations." Raila, on the other side, insisting it will not be possible to have a multiple choice referendum. And this is quite interesting, even as allies turned sort of nemesis. This is a political game, Arthur, and I'd like to begin on that particular note. What do you make of the latest urge to push for this particular proposed plebiscite?
Well, I think Turkana marks maybe the second leg after Sagana 3 that the president did in Mount Kenya. And I think the president and Raila now are essentially reaching out and trying to create momentum behind BBI, trying to counter the kind of information that has been planted in the minds of people. And Turkana was very interesting in the sense that in the first place, Raila received a fairly warm reception. His message received a fairly warm reception. But turning to Governor Nanok's message, I heard him say 3 different things. Apart from, his opinion on whether he will support or not, he said, 1, he needs more resources in Turkana County. And BBI gives him that. He then said he wants more parliamentary seats for Turkana County. And if you look at the BBI proposal, the BBI gives Turkana an extra constituency. And then he said he has a major problem with the 1 man, 1 shilling formula that will essentially, for his county and 7 others, will give them net less money despite the increase from 15% minimum to 35% minimum. Of course, that takes the assumption that if it's a minimum of 35%, the government is actually going 35%. If you have to do some math around that, it makes that assumption. However, Raila then countered that with a lot of explanation about what BBI actually entails, the history of BBI, the history of marginalization, and the question that kept hanging in the air. And if you listen to Governor Nanok without having been asked that, he tried to address that question by saying, you know what, people are asking me what I've done with the 10 times 8 billion, yes. 10 billion every year times 8 years, 80 billion, what have I done with it? And he went round to say, the only substantive thing he said about that is, you know what, we implement programs that are agreed. He did not actually say that we have increased availability of clean, usable water from 1,000 households to 20,000 households. If you ask me, those are the critical outputs of devolution, that you increase things like water coverage, you improve the availability of health services to people, you increase agricultural output. I was hoping that that's what the governor would talk about. Okay. The challenge about what he has done with the 80 million. One, a lot of the things you do must provide better health, a better economy, better access to market, and essentially an improved standard of living for the people. That's how it is designed to be. He did not touch on that. And for me, that's a question that must hang on the heads of all governors. They must answer the question of how they have used the money given by national government, devolved money, to improve the standard of living of the people living in that county.
Well, efficiency is quite important. Just the other day, we're taking a look at the development track record of various counties, and it was quite unfortunate mentioning or noting that some counties had actually not implemented up to 50% of that particular agenda or budget. Stephen Mwakesi, he's brought up a very critical point, which was highlighted in that particular conversation in Turkana, the issue on county sharing formula. Nanok was quite critical, mentioning that his county would lose through a sharing formula that intends to use population in revenue sharing. This might come up in various counties as we push for the 24 counties requisite. What do you make of this?
Jesse, I think for me this weekend was a very definitive one. Turkana County and the Turkana people are quite an important node when it comes to make political decision making within the Northern Belt. Turkana Nation is well spread out all across the various counties, that is Turkana, Samburu, Isiolo, Marsabit. That nation is huge, including Laikipia. So the fact that Raila went there over this weekend and to directly try and call out Governor Nanok, because during that whole period until yesterday we met at church, Nanok really gave the entire team a white back, just leaving Raila being a mining cabinet secretary, John Munyes. The battle that indeed that was brought forward and what Governor Nanok was trying to push forward is a question of two issues. One, the issue of resources, which they've been really complaining about, and is going to be a critical issue when you look at the proposed changes within BBI. And number two is the question of general marginalization and also post Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency and what remains as a bargaining chip for the Turkana nation. Nanok, as we do know, is a second-time governor. So even as he makes his statements, he has really every reason to utilize such a platform to get the very best, even for himself as a person. Because after this, then he'd have to see what next. And so it's a thinking game that happened this weekend, and Raila has a lot to balance, being the key proponent of PBI as he goes towards the north and try to entice the northern communities to accept the proposed changes. And if you saw from the polling that was done with acceptability in terms of BBI, most of the northern counties were completely opposed to the proposed amendment to the Constitution. So it's a really intense battle. The population question also makes a very good case on why a lot of these counties would be opposed to anything that is contained within the BBI because of the potential loss of revenues that accrue towards this particular county. So it's a thin balancing act, and I appreciate that people were very candid and open about these particular issues. I think what I found to be quite disturbing for me was that Raila used this chance to question Nanok's allegiances to Tanga, and saying that if he really had issues within BBI, he should have come and seen him directly, which really puts the question that is this being utilized by Raila to really to try and pull up the low ratings that he's been having in the north over the past few months. So I think it's a political game that's going to be happening over the next few weeks, but it was a very good show of the dynamics that are contained within the proposed changes in BBI in different communities, and the north is the new battleground.
Stephen Mwakesi, speaking of the dynamics, just last week we saw a group emerging under the tag Linda Katiba, clearly stating that they're against this particular referendum bill 2020. What do you make of the clamor of those individuals who are actually pushing for a no campaign? What do you make of it?
I think the team, as they called it, are people who have been really putting to question the commitment of the existing leadership from both parties in terms of pushing for effective implementation of the 2010 Constitution. The President and Raila have really put forward the reasons why they find that there is need to do the First Amendment to the Constitution. But the Linda Katiba is an alternative voice. Martha Karua was very clear in saying that when people offer an alternative voice, that does not mean that they're just generally opposing. They do have some actual reasons why they are insisting on implementation of the existing constitution. I think it's a refreshing voice to have. It's good also to hear their debates and how they put them across. Again, it also depends with their ability to be able to push across such a campaign in the wave of a government-funded and well-oiled program that is BBI. It's going to be a very difficult task for them, but they do have good positions and a good statement to make of why they believe that it's time to really push for implementation of the existing constitution.
All right, Arthur Odera, it would be interesting, even as we continue talking about the Linda Katiba group, the issue about being apolitical, they've really emphasized on that particular note, and critics might argue some of the individuals have in the past been linked to certain factions, including Tanga Tanga. Well, what do you make of the politicizing of this particular push for no versus yes? Well, what do you make of it?
Politicized it will be. It already is politicized to a large extent because politicians have taken the lead in all the messaging of BBI, which is what has colored the debate so far. It's almost now clear to the vast majority of Kenyans that Tanga Tanga will be on the opposing side, not necessarily opposing BBI, but making it difficult for it to pass. And however that is positioned, the reality is that all the consistencies, the messaging of Tanga Tanga has been that BBI is not a good thing, that BBI is not a priority. That argument, you know, that it's been seesawing a little bit between priority, not good at all, terrible, will hurt us, and so on. And I think there's been a lot of brinkmanship in terms of what position they've taken at different times. However, what I think the Linda Katiba initiative will do is to sort of distill the arguments on either side of the discussion and bring us the substance of BBI. If nothing else, they will help us to focus on the most important debate issues surrounding the BBI. A lot of it has been sweeping statements in the past. You know, BBI will make it more expensive to run government. It's a terrible thing. It's about the rich and powerful and not the common mwananchi. Sweeping statements that really have not been examined for what they carry with them. About whether Linda Katiba will be linked to certain politicians, given that Tanga Tanga took the lead in, shall we say, trying to undermine the momentum of BBI, even before BBI came alive in the form of the report, it is inevitable that those individuals that lead Linda Katiba they will be looked at much more critically in terms of their allegiances in the past and now, and they'll be seen to be agents of somebody from somewhere. Now, if you look at Linda Katiba, let's say Linda Katiba is a perfectly objective, driven by the common good and driven by solid democratic principles coming to the table. If someone were to ask me, tell me the argument, the solid argument. And you know, it is said that if you can't put it in a simple, concise way, then you don't know it. Can anyone give us the simple, short, concise answer as to what Linda Katiba is about? There must be. If we are to take it seriously, if we are to give it the attention it deserves, there must be a concise answer as to what Linda Katiba is about. Is it about the cost of BBI? Is it that the BBI doesn't have solid, good proposals? Is it that BBI is undemocratic? What is it? If we can solidify that argument, then I think the Linda Katiba initiative will help us to have a healthy, substantive, constructive debate about BBI.
Stephen Mwakesi, even as I forward that particular question to you, same thing. Will they be able to distance themselves from claims that they're a Tanga Tanga, quote-unquote, special purpose vehicle?
I think for me, when I look at the personalities who are behind Linda Katiba, they've been actually trying to really dissociate themselves from the Tanga discussions. I mean, the deputy president over this weekend was very clear that he's not opposed to be here, but he wants a clear, concise conversation on what exactly is contained in there and the things that will really work out for Mwananchi. The Linda Katiba have been absolutely clear on their position, and when you look at the luminaries behind it, Martha Karua, Bwana, and Ndi, and all manner of people, they've been very clear and concise in their messaging that they do not feel it's a time for a constitutional amendment, period. They are not even interested in making contributions to that particular document whatsoever. And so for me, I believe, I don't think they are willing to be tagged in any sort of shape of way and form with the Tanga movement. And for them, that's a task that they really have to work on, and how they rebrand themselves separately from the Tanga movement. Tanga will also try as much as possible to make itself known that they are not in any way associated with that particular faction for purposes of maintaining the position of the deputy president within government as still a key leader within the government agenda. However, this, as much as I say, this is going to be an uphill task for both parties. But for the luminaries within the Linda Katiba debate, I find that for them, this is also a moment for them to put forward a reawakening on their part about their separate move towards how they look at